I am here in Adairsville, a beautiful, beautiful, picturesque little town. I'm gonna walk over here so you can kind of see their Main Street area. I mean, you could walk up and down here and I can see many Hollywood films wanting to come here. Maybe they have, I don't know, we need to look into that. But you also see a big presence of the Great Locomotive Chase. On the side of the police department there, you've got a sign, City of Adairsville, Great Locomotive Chase. Then over here, I was just standing on what seems to be their old courthouse, and peeking inside, it looks like it's a little museum that's got a courthouse set up to period. Now, I don't know what year this was built, but I would imagine it was probably here during the chase in 1862. They've got some historic markers over here. Of course, you got the general down at the bottom there. And as you walk along over here, you've got the train station. Again, I don't see a marker with a year on the train station, but this building seems to be original. Historic depot. There is a sign, but it doesn't have a year on it. And so maybe we can go to georgiacivilwar.org to get some more information on that. But I believe this is the original pre-war depot, at least. It's fairly large, and it's got a beautiful mural on the side over here too. Look at how beautiful this town is. Lots of little shops too. I can imagine when we're not in quarantine, this place is a great little place for a day trip up from Marietta. So here is the mural. I'm gonna step back here. Beautiful piece. And there's the general coming through the mountains. And then they have another plaque here detailing the history of the chase. And they've turned their depot into their welcome center and history museum. Again, another small museum I have not been in that is now on the list. Gotta come check it out. So when we last left our raiders in Kingston, Andrews had left Kingston and about 6 miles north had tore up some track, and then was continuing on up here to Adairsville. And then, of course, Kingston is where Fuller and his crew were forced off of the Yonah and had to get on the W.R. Smith because of the congestion of all the trains at Kingston. So Fuller takes the William R. Smith, and of course he only makes it about 6 miles because there, lo and behold, he finds the track has been completely tore up. And so he is forced to stop. It's damaged beyond repair to continue. If he wanted to continue the chase, he didn't have time to sit there and rebuild the railroad. So Fuller gets halted there for a minute. The general makes his way up the line from the south, and when it gets up here to Adairsville, it meets its nemesis, the Texas. The Texas and its conductor was sitting here and waiting to be able to move out. Now, the Texas was heading southbound. Remember, the general's heading north. And the Texas apparently had a lot of cars on the back of it. It was a long train. And so it was sitting there blocking the way. And so the general had to move over onto a siding. He couldn't get through because the Texas was blocking the way. So Russ Bonds has a real great description of the Texas and the general sitting there side by side, just huffing and puffing, and, kind of a, foreshadowing of what's to come. And to move forward, Andrews has to convince the conductor of the Texas to move out of the way so that he can go. And he does this. We know by now that he is a pretty smooth talker. So he's able to convince the Texas to back up enough to move out of the way. Now, that conductor, he looks at Andrews and he says, man, you're crazy. If you go now, because they were both waiting for another southbound train coming south from Calhoun to make its way down past here at Adairsville so that they could then move forward. They knew there was another train on the schedule, and it was at Calhoun. So the conductor told Andrews, he said, you know, you're stupid for going. You don't want me to move out of the way. You can't go that way. It's, you know, the other train's on its way and you'll have a head-on collision. Well, Andrews didn't have time to wait. He knew Fuller was hot on his trail by this point. Now, he knew also that the track had been tore up, but he wasn't taking any chances. He needed to get out of there. So Texas moves over, and the general takes off full steam ahead as fast as he can. One of the raiders, Jacob Parrott, I think, says, you know, they were just tossed and turned all over the place inside those boxcars as they were flying down the tracks, I think maybe at 60 miles an hour, which for a train was really fast. And he makes it to Calhoun just as that other train is pulling out. We'll find out what the name of that train is when I stop in Calhoun. But meanwhile, Andrews takes off from here, from Adairsville, and Fuller is stopped between Kingston and here. But he knew, because of the schedule, that Texas was scheduled to be coming down the line. So he knew eventually he'd be coming. So they just kind of had to wait a minute where the break in the tracks was until the Texas came down the line, slowed down. They saw that the rail was broken and that the William R. Smith was sitting there, and they were able to stop in time. And he flagged him down and he said, hey man, that guy, that general, that was not an ammunition train. We need to borrow your train. We can't go any further on the William R. Smith. We need to borrow the Texas. And Texas said, sure, take him. But remember, the Texas was heading southbound towards Atlanta, and the general is heading north. Of course, there's no round table over here to turn the train around. So what do? They put her, or him, I don't know what the Texas would be, or her or him. They put it into reverse and take off back north in reverse. And so then that's where the kind of really incredible part of this chase occurs, where you got one train, the Texas, flying up the tracks, chasing the general backwards. Now, another cool thing about the Texas is, just like in Kennesaw, where you can see the general on display at the Southern Museum, the Texas has recently been refurbished and is in a gorgeous new exhibit at the Atlanta History Center in Atlanta, in Buckhead. And they've done a fabulous job restoring her. They do tell the locomotive chase portion of the Texas's history, but really they use it overall to tell a history of the railroad in general in Atlanta. So, because really, if you think about it, even though the general and the Texas and all these other trains, the Yonah, the William R. Smith, they all have such an important part in this history, it's only one day in their entire lifespan of service. So the Atlanta History Center has used the Texas to tell the story of Atlanta railroading. So I highly suggest a trip down there. I'm not going to make it to Atlanta today, going all the way back down. But yeah, so here we are at Adairsville, a beautiful town on a beautiful day. And we're all going to have to come back to hit up this history museum. And now I will head on up the road to Calhoun.